This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from other people's failures and successes. Today, we have Sandra Francisco, who is helping entrepreneurs go from an idea to profit while balancing personal growth and financial freedom. Hello, Sandra. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining me today. Right, we'll go straight into it because we have a time frame on this episode. So first section that I want to talk to you about is, so you did a degree in information technology. Why did you choose that initially?
It was a very simple answer there. I did not want to spend a year doing general arts program. And this was the one that I found that you can actually go straight into this program without the year of, history and geography and all the other things. And I did not have any desire to do that. I just wanted to learn something specific.
Right. And so why information tech? Like, were you particularly techie? Were you into coding at the time?
No, actually. So it was very much a business and technology degree.
Right.
And then later I did a commerce degree after that.
Yep.
And the most interesting thing to me was the business degree. But it was also the business degree that I didn't have to do a general arts degree or a year before it.
Right.
So that really was the reason, because there was other schools. I actually turned down a full scholarship at another school where there was a year of general arts and then you got into commerce.
Right.
And I was like, no, I just want to go into it. So the technology was like, oh, well, we'll see what that's about. But it was really for the business.
Right. And then, as you said, you did a second degree in commerce and business. So I assume that was leading on after your first degree, you thought you needed something more specific. What did the commerce and the business second degree give you?
It really was the fascination with business. That was where I started the first one. And I did not know that I would go into a good 10 years of technology, because that's where I led when I started to work. Because I actually started to work full time as I was doing my second degree in very much the age of the internet, right? It was like in 2000 as we were, just kind of being immersed in the internet. And I was designing and actually creating networks. So in information technology and in building networks, I didn't expect that's where my life was going to go, but I've learned that you look back and you're like, oh, everything was lined up the way it was supposed to be. But I did the commerce degree because I still was so much, involved in wanting to learn business and do business. So I thought, okay, well, I got kind of half business, half technology. Let me fully immerse on the business pieces that I missed.
So before we go into the experience section, which is about your experience in your jobs before your business, your MBA that you did at Toronto. So how much has your MBA helped you in an entrepreneurial world rather than a corporate world? Do you think it was aligned, or do you think because people that I've spoken to say that MBAs are great for networking, equally for an investment banker or for something along those sorts of lines, it gives you great framework. But I have heard that it sometimes fails entrepreneurs. Was that your experience?
I mean, I would say, so I do want to say the MBA I did was MBA for managers at the time that I was in corporate. So it was kind of a overview of an MBA. It's not like I was going to do like a full accredited MBA, and then my life turned into a different direction. But in my experience with both the commerce degree and the MBA for manager program in entrepreneurship is that I would say fairly that I've used maybe 10 to 20% of that knowledge. That's my experience. That's all I can say. And I've seen that with my clients as well that do have, multiple MBAs sometimes that, it's not everything. It's not going to set you up for entrepreneurship because there's so much other things that you don't get taught in a textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Right. So we're going to cover covered quickly your education and your experience, because I want to really go into your expertise that you now are in helping entrepreneurs. But your first role that you took was it at HP? It was in Intrica HP?
In Hewlett Packard. So it was, yeah.
Yeah. And so how did you get that role? What was the role? Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was actually right. I was still in my second year of university and it was a part of an internship program. So I was very fortunate too that I chose that program. See, I was choosing it just because I wanted to get away from that year, but it led to so many things. So sometimes there's a higher knowledge.
Yeah.
It was actually, I was still in university. I started there and then they brought me on full time. So it was kind of an internship that they never wanted to end. So it just became a job that then I did the next piece with them. And then they actually got that piece then became part of CIBC. And so there was different shifts and changes. But yes, it was very much a pure hands-on technology installing equipment, like in these massive data centers that I remember the first time I walked into this data center was like being in a spaceship. It was like, whoa, where am I? And I was literally like installing and coding equipment. I never thought I'd be there, but that's where I started.
And this wasn't planned, but it occurred to me. Did you go into that with being one of the only females in that sort of role? Because technology is a very male-dominated arena. And how did you sort of cope with that?
Yes, 100%. And that was 20 years ago. So
It's
yes,
even worse
double
than it is
yes.
now. Yes.
There was most of the time, 1 to 2 women in the group of engineers, which was around 200 people for the whole time that I was there for 15 years in corporate. There was only ever like a handful at the most, and 98% male. My experience was incredibly positive, and I do recognize and understand that other people have had very difficult experiences in that, but I can only ever speak about my experience. I worked with men that were caring, that helped me, that were mentors, that never competed with me, that always had a helping hand, always asked if you need something, come to me. And that includes the people I worked with, the leaders, because everybody was men. Like then you go into like the C levels and the VPs, everybody was men. I did not have any negative experiences. I experienced men being incredibly supportive.
That's really good. I'm really pleased. I'd like pleased is right, but I think that's fantastic because there's often a sort of stigma that can come to being in a very male dominated arena. Okay, so you then moved to Bell Canada and you had various roles. You stayed there for 10 years. Um, why did you stay so long? And tell me a little bit about the different roles, because I know there was different things you did, 3 different things you did at Bell Canada.
Yes, that's so I did different things within the company, so that's
Yeah.
why I stayed so long.
Right.
So I did initially move in again, it was in a customer engineering role. So it was working with clients, building out their networks with national clients. And I did that for almost 5 years. And again, then I felt that itch of business. I was like, I did these business degrees and I really have not applied it. And I was just, it kept on, it wouldn't go away. So then I moved into product development and actually channel management and working in a life cycle of products, which was incredibly different. Now I will come back to the male story here, and I will tell you that my experience. So when I moved into marketing, then it was almost like, still probably 60% male, but like we went to a 60-40 versus 98%. And what I experienced actually was all the things that I hear women talk about men, I experienced in other women. So I experienced that competitive behavior, that trying to take you down. And I wasn't equipped. And I had all of this time of this nurturing team environment and supporting leaders. So I was completely caught off guard when people were deliberately manipulating to take you out. I was totally like, what is happening? It took me a while to catch up. And then I learned to protect myself. So and this is just my experience, but what I took away from it is when someone is secure in their skill set and what they are good at, like in technology, the males that I worked with, they had a role and they knew their role. So they knew this is what I do. And then I can take a course and I can get better. I can code, I can design. And they didn't feel the need to take anything from somebody or to lash out because there was such a technical, clear role. When I moved into marketing, marketing is hard to pin down. Like what makes you good? When you'd have clients, some clients liked it, some clients didn't like it, and then also I was so technical, so I excelled so fast because we were building technical products. And a lot of the women in marketing didn't understand technology at all. So I was a huge threat to them because they felt that I was saying to them that they're not good at their jobs. So I got so much of that negative environment. And I sum it up to the fact, is it men? Is it women? That wasn't my experience. It was confidence, non-confidence in what you were doing. That was my experience.
And so it was say about marketing, but it's partly an art form and partly a science. But I assume you were very good at the metrics side of marketing and being able to measure success and failure.
Exactly. And because we were building, like we were still a technology company, right? So we were building technical products. So being able to understand the client's needs and then translate them into the technical knowledge that the engineers needed to know to build, that made me very good at my job very quickly.
Mm.
So yes, I've had this dual role, and it's what I do now. It's this dual role between being able to speak in more technical speak and then being able to translate that into like the human conversation and the communication. And although it's different what I do now, it's still the interplay. I still feel like I've spent most of my life in an interplay of somehow, like I'm the go-between, like between this and between this, like I will bring you together.
Yeah. I understand that because I worked at PwC for about 15 years, or in the Big Four for about 15 years, and I'm not a coder, but I worked for about 8 years in the business side of technology, building calculators, software, various things that we built for corporates, for our clients. And I know that interplay because I wasn't technical, but because I worked with them for so long and developed relationships, I was then able to very ably be able to sell or communicate with other people in the company what we were doing, because I had that insight into the technology. And I think I understand that sort of that in between of being able to uh, ably be able to manage the business side and the technology side is actually a very interesting space to be in, that middle section, isn't it?
It is. And you know what the key thing is communication.
Yeah.
So you know how to communicate with the client that doesn't understand, in this case, technical terms.
Yeah.
And then you know how to communicate with the engineers that only understand technical terms.
Yeah, and will not accept anything other than technical terms. That was my experience. They very much like to stay in their lane and did not want to go in front of a client for hell or high water.
Oh, no, never.
Okay, fantastic. So when I was doing some research on you, you said and you said that the reason why you left your corporate role was because um, there was a life-changing event that happened to you. If you're happy to, can you share what that life-changing event was?
Yes, of course. So it actually was 11 years ago that I left my corporate job. And a year before that, I experienced really intense anxiety where I didn't know what it was. It was just like my heart rate would go up to like 160, 180, and it would last for 3 to 4 days. So because it didn't show up like your typical anxiety panic attacks,
Mm.
it took over a year for doctors to do all these different tests and for them to finally say to me, well, I think this is anxiety, which I actually felt like when a doctor finally said that to me, I felt like they were basically saying, we're done, we can't help you. That's what I interpreted, because I felt like they were like, we did all these tests, there's nothing really wrong with you, it's just anxiety. And I'm like, well, but I'm still unable to like live my life. So I thought, what I interpreted was, well, now I got to go take care of myself. So I realized that I could not continue a job that was a 9 to 5. Like, I don't think any corporate these days is 9 to 5. It's like 12, 16-hour days.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't, my life is at stake. I can't keep trying to heal myself and trying to keep up this facade, because in my corporate world, nobody knew what was going on with me.
Right.
Nobody, the amount of energy that it took to go through that for an entire year. And I would not even sleep for those 3 to 4 days when it was high intensity,
Right.
but nobody knew anything. When I went in and resigned, my VP was shocked and did not want to let me go because it was so sudden and they had no idea. But I knew that I couldn't keep up that energy and heal and survive. So it took something so, I think, tragic for me, because I was so attached to what it meant to climb the corporate ladder, to the titles, to the achievements, that if it wasn't the fact that I felt like I had to choose me and my health and my life, I would have just kept on going.
And how hard was it keeping something as that affected you in such a big way from colleagues and bosses and people in your company?
Well, I was a very different person back then, and it was incredibly closed off. And I felt like I had to protect myself from being in close knit relationships. So I was incredibly what I would call professional. And I think a lot of people in corporate keep their human side out of corporate. Especially if you are going up the corporate ladder and if you're going into those titles, it is in my experience, it was an expectation that you did not show up with your human self. Like the people that would show up and complain and say they were stressed and that, it was known that, well, they'll always be the low level people. Like they will never rise above because that's what they talk about. But as you rise up in the corporate world, it was like, you don't say you're stressed, never mind anxiety. Like you don't even talk about being stressed because then you're just might as well kiss this promotion goodbye. So I didn't feel like I had the permission. And I also had the robotic way of living that way for so many years that I could do it. I could never do that today. Like I'm so transparent with everybody that I work with that if I'm off, I will explain to people. If I have a client meeting these days, I'm like, I'm currently, this or that, and I'm completely transparent. I'm like, let me get present, let me get into the moment, but I don't pretend to be anything that I'm not. But I was just such a different human that I was in a shell. So it was easy to kind of go through it when you've never showed up as a human being anyways.
So true. So true. There is so I've experienced something exactly the same, and that just closing, I actually think it's detrimental to you long term for your own personal health and mental health as well. But being able just to close off a section of your life when you're in the office is actually it's part of the course. It's something that you learn and you develop, that, as you say, a shell. But I think it does have long-term effects on you, and it sounds
Yes.
like it did for you as well. But I just want to move slightly on. Do you think more humanity, so now you work with entrepreneurs, and I don't know if you work with you don't work with corporates now, do you?
No, I don't.
No.
My clients are all entrepreneurs.
But
Yes.
do you think that humanity is now a little bit more part of leaders? Because I think over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, there's been a deeper emphasis on leaders being a little bit more humane and sharing insight into themselves as well. They might not say something if they've got a medical condition, but they share a little bit more of themselves. Is that your experience as well?
So both. So the people that I keep up with that I worked with in my corporate environments, which are, like these are billion-dollar Canadian corporations. So they're the last to change because they're so set in their ways. So
Yeah.
the people that I keep up with in those environments, they tell me not a lot has changed. But I have entrepreneurs that have clients that are these corporate corporations that are, like Apple and these high-tech companies that are at the forefront of bringing on that kind of leadership. So yes, I've seen so many news stories of how leaders are showing up and saying like, I'm afraid, like we're about to make this big move and I'm actually here, I'm your leader, and I'm going to say we're taking this risk, like I'm afraid. So I've heard those stories through my clients, and then I've got colleagues in these traditional corporate, legacy organizations that are saying, yeah, not a lot has changed. So I think there's both happening, but overall I'm so grateful to see any level of change happen because we are all human beings. As long as I have not yet met a robot that's fully functional. And, I get it. People say that's the future and everything. But, if you're still human, if you still got organs, if you're still breathing, you're still human, it's very difficult to shut that part off for anything. Like you said, it's going to impact you. It's just a matter of time.
I'd agree. And so I worked in PwC and KPMG, so the big four, and they are, in essence, even though I was in a technology area, they're still accountants, which is a slow moving. It's like lawyers and accountants are slow moving companies, slow moving huge companies. So I think I would agree with you that some companies are a little bit slower to move to this, but I've seen it on people that I've interacted with. There's, especially in the entrepreneurial world, there is an expectation that you give a little bit yourself as well, which I think is amazing for leaders. I think the employees get more from it and the leaders get more from it as well. So I would say it's both sides. The last thing I was going to say is, are you better now? Do you still suffer from the anxiety, or are you better?
And no, I is one of my greatest accomplishments is actually that I've healed from anxiety. It actually took me 8 months. So when I left corporate, when I resigned, I went to the bookstore because I felt like, okay, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to go research. And it was like a magical moment where this little tiny book fell in my hands, and it's called Hope and Help for Your Nerves by Claire Weeks. And it's really simple. It just really teaches you to sit with the anxiety no matter how intense it is. So I just got this chair that I named my anxiety chair in my living room. And every time that I felt like walking or running or just like doing something to exit out of it, I would go and sit. And over time, it would get better and better and better. And towards the end, it was exactly 8 months. And towards the end, I started to have hours and hours and hours free from this. And then I would get like a panic attack here and there. For me, I celebrated panic attacks because that was such a huge improvement. And then because I wasn't afraid of the panic attacks, they actually exited very quickly. Because to me, it was such a great sign that they would only come on once in a while. So within 8 months, I was 100% healed from anxiety naturally. And I have stress, I have fear, I'm human, I process all kinds of emotions, but I have never lived in a prison of anxiety like I did back then.
And I think with people that have suffered with mental health issues, the actual accepting and embracing it is actually part of the course to be able to get yourself better, isn't it?
For me, and again, we can ever only speak about our experiences, it was the giant shift that I made in my life was instead of fighting it, because I was, I would go to the emergency room when I felt like I was having a heart attack. I would, walk and walk and walk for hours because I wouldn't want to stand still. I would do everything, do to try and like get away from it. So it was such a radical thing to sit with it. But it worked. That's all I can say. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but that was my experience and it really worked for me. And it's also something I've applied in my life when other things have shown up. Other, experiences, things you don't want. It's like that coming back to that acceptance of what is, because once you have an example of an experience that's worked for you, that's the best teacher. Like nobody else's opinion or textbooks or anything will ever going to match your own experience. So for me, because that acceptance has worked, I've applied that kind of thing to other challenges in my life.
Do you meditate?
I don't meditate the way classical meditation conversation, which is like you sit for an hour or 20 minutes or whatever, and you clear your mind. I tried that during my course of healing from anxiety, and I was in intense anxiety, so maybe that was worse, but it made me just more frantic because I felt like I had to clear my mind, and my mind was going like super fast. I'm like, wait, I'm failing. This is failing. This isn't working. So what I actually do, which maybe some people would not call meditation, is I sit with myself. And I don't do it in routine anymore because now I kind of do it as I feel it, more flow with it, but I will sit and process something. So if I am having a business challenge or personal challenge, I know sometimes I put on tones, like, meditation tones, and I will just sit there and wait and see what shows up. I have usually a notebook, I'll make notes. So it's a form of meditation, but what I've heard described as formal meditation did not work for me in my experience.
Right. Thank you. So you help entrepreneurs achieve personal growth, fulfillment, and extraordinary profit. So how do you do that?
I think the first thing is the fact that believing that you can have both, that you can actually grow as a human being, be fully in your body and aware and process emotions and have a business that makes profit. In my experience, so when I left corporate, I started consulting and then coaching came later. But in my experience in working with, lots of different entrepreneurs and different business segments, there is a very popular society belief that you have one or you have the other. You can, like really work really hard, put a lot of effort and have profit in your business, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you well-being. It's going to cost you family. It's going to cost you whatever. That is a very strong belief in our society. And I've also seen many people now that I've worked with that have come back to a harmony. I don't know if we can ever balance anything, but come back to a harmony of prioritizing their well-being and who they are and their own human advancement while putting in strategies in their business that create profit. So just the fact that those two things can very much coexist is the first thing that I do with my clients. And then how do you go about it? Well, it actually comes down to tools, strategies, systems. So in business, it's well accepted that we have tools, strategies, and systems to succeed. Whichever textbook you read or whatever person you follow, that you're going to have to learn marketing in some way, lead generation in some way. But sometimes we don't realize we can do that same thing, tools, strategies, and systems, to self-awareness and self-development. It still requires all those things. It requires that you accept the fact that you're human and you're going to have emotions, and maybe surrender the fact that you're going after, one day I will just be happy, or I will be in full joy, and it'll be like I'm working towards a calm place where there's no ripples in the water. And in nature, that doesn't happen. Nothing in nature stands still. Like, we have seasons, we have, the seas are calm one day, not calm another day. Nothing in nature resembles just no change. So if we come into a self-acceptance that we are going to, as humans, experience all kinds of different things, and that doesn't have to mean that we have to exit out of our businesses. You can go through a difficult time, you can go through divorce, you can go through anxiety, you can go through depression, and work through that as you continue to run your business. It obviously has to do with priorities. At the speed that you're going to go is going to have to change depending on what you're doing. But it comes down to understanding the fundamentals of business, what it takes to get a business off the ground and to grow it. And then if you're interested and if you want to prioritize you and your well-being and your growth, then it's the same thing. It's just learning those systems.
So if you were to meet a sort of Gary Vaynerchuk type character who talks about hustle, and sort of Grant Cardone sort of character, you've got to hustle, you've got to work 20 hours a day, and they came to you and they still believed that, but they knew something was wrong. They couldn't quite put their finger on it, but they knew. How would you approach a character like that, a sort of alpha male who believes that hustle and grind is so important? How would you show them the personal growth side, the harmony side that they would perhaps be able to achieve?
I love this question. Beautiful question. I will say, if you listen to Gary Vee, the last year, he's changed his tune.
He has, yes.
Right? So so definitely already there's something has shifted in his world because he's toned it way down, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I'll say. Something must have shifted for him. The very first thing that I would do, and I do with every single client, is check to see if there's a match. I do not believe that it is my role or my purpose to push beliefs or to do things for people. I am first and foremost present, a guide, and an ability to actually heal with energy as well. So the very first thing is I would ask intuitive questions that always show up for me in the moment. I don't prepare my questions when I get into a first meeting with a client. I rely on the fact that they will show up at the right time. And I would gauge whether this person had a desire to create change. So if they had a desire, if they were like, and actually this is 2 months ago, I started with a client that she's female, not male, but very similar. Her business is now in multi-million dollars. And she was in a space of crisis, like, why? What did I do all this for? Why? What am I going to do with all this money? This isn't what I thought it would be. So she was already coming to me, having been very much a woman that was like a man, living in the masculine energy, and in a space of like, I'm not happy. I've done all this. I've gotten here. I have the accolades. I have the money. And what's wrong with me? So in that case, we were a perfect match, and we've done amazing work in a couple months. But if somebody had come to me and they still wanted to hold on to their beliefs, and they did not want anybody to question their beliefs, they were so attached to believing the hustle is the way that trying to detach them from their beliefs would actually hurt them. I would not take them on as a client, because I don't believe I would benefit. I believe I would hurt that person. If they're not ready, if they need those beliefs, because they need that at the moment, it is not up to me to separate people from their beliefs. I can only guide them when they're ready to do so.
Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone that is wanting and desiring to have freedom and to be their own boss. So on the business side, that's the key. That's what I hear always. It's like, I want to own my time. I want to be free. I want to be able to make choices in my life. And what I add as an extra layer to that is somebody that has all that, the desire to be an entrepreneur, the wanting their freedom, and at the same time wants and desires knowing themselves and growing themselves alongside of the business. So they're curious. They're typically, and they're different levels. Some people have done a lot of work on themselves and they're, very well, developed personally. And some people just at that stage of curiosity. Well, what would that be like? What does consciousness mean? What does energy mean? I'm curious. I want to know, and I want to run my business. So that would fit into my range. If somebody was to come to me and said, I want somebody to teach me how to run a business and how to launch a business, I could care less about personal development and well-being. I'm just going to hustle. I'm going to get this done. I would say to them, there are thousands, probably millions of people that can help you. I'm not the one.
I think that's it's very self-aware. I think that's it's a very valuable thing to understand what you're good at and what you're not, or what you don't want to do. Sometimes it's not that you're not good at it, it's not where you want to be.
Yes.
And one of the things you just said was about options, and I sort of see money and money helps you have options to make other decisions or change the way that you view things. What's your sort of view on having options as a client?
You mean having options
Them
in,
having options. So let's just say it's money. Money
yes,
gives you options to either not work or work,
yes.
or take an extended holiday, or change your business or change your lifestyle within there. What's your views on the importance of options, let's say?
Yes, which I think that's the importance of making sure your business is profitable and make sure your business is making money. So what I say that sometimes gets some backlash from the people that are the personal development clients. They tend to, like, I've had many conversations where I can see them like sitting back and like, whoa, what did you just say? That I didn't expect that from you. Because I do say the heart of a business is numbers and profit. And that's the heart of the business. The heart of the human that you are is whatever you believe to be true. Like, so integrity, you want to serve, you want to make a difference, you want to change the economy. That's the heart of who you are. And you can apply that in non-for-profit, in your spare time, in volunteering. You have so many ways that you can apply that. If you choose to apply that to a business, then the heart of a business is numbers and profit. So you do need to understand how to create profit in a business. And again, we're back to the strategy, tools, and systems. And yes, like if you have a business that's not profitable, then it's more of a hobby, which if you're okay with that, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can't afford to have a hobby, then you don't have choice. Then you're in a place where you're running the clock, where it's like, oh, I've only got a few more months to try this business, and then I'm going to run out of money, and then I will have to go get a job. It's very hard to make the business work under that kind of pressure, unless you're a unique person that is uniquely qualified to work under crazy pressure, which is only a few people. Most people don't do well like that. So when you put yourself under that kind of pressure, it tends not to work. And when I do meet with new potential clients, I always ask, if they're leaving their job, if they're starting a business, I always ask for their numbers. Can you leave this job and can you start this business? Do you have a year's worth of basic needs saved? So if you're going to do this full time, because if you don't, again, that's something I look for. Are they a match for me? I had a potential client that it was not for me last week, that she was like, yes, I've got 4 months. I just left this job. I have 4 months of money and then I'll be in trouble. And then, so I got to make this business up and running and going in 4 months. And she shared her idea with me. And I could tell this idea needed so much exploring and may not even be a profitable idea. So immediately I was like, I am not even going to bring you into any of my programs because I don't want to take your money at this stage. Like, it's not realistic. So 100% is having a respect and understanding for the numbers and for the choice that money gives you. And if I've triggered you and I say the heart of the business is money and profit, I would welcome you to question that and to do some work. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you are, either aspiring or are an entrepreneur, and that's triggering, that just means you need to do some work around that, because you may have some limiting beliefs there that are not going to work for you in business.
Do you think there's been a change or a shift in the millennials joining the workforce?
What they bring to the table?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I mean, so the colleagues that I keep up with in corporate, we laugh a lot at the stories that they have people coming for interviews and they're super qualified and they know exactly what they're doing. And they will say, yeah, I'm willing to work 3 days a week, or I'm willing to work 4 days a week, or I'm 100%, going to be remote. And they're like, I'm not negotiating this. This is just who I am. Like, this is my life. Like, I will give you this skill for this much money. And they're willing to take less money and not work as much. So I've been told from the people in the corporate world how much that is shifting and changing. And again, there's resistance sometimes to hire these people, but then they see the competitors bringing on the skill set and doing well with the skill set. And they're like, oh, okay, we have to adapt.
I read that you did NLP training as well.
I did. That was early on. Yes.
So I interviewed Sue Knight, who's quite well known in NLP at work, is what she specialized in. So how did that help you, the study of NLP?
So for me, and I'll be completely honest and transparent, it didn't really connect with me so much. So at the time that I did NLP was the year after I left corporate, and it was good for me to heal myself. And it was part of the mentor that was teaching NLP. I did it because he was teaching that. I didn't even know what NLP was, but he was somebody that was an early mentor for me that really helped me. And he was teaching a course on NLP. So I was like, I'll go to spend time with you and to continue to be in your presence. So through that, I did my practitioner and my master's really to be in his energy. And the way he taught NLP was very much in a heal thyself mode. So that spoke to me a lot and it helped me a lot. In my coaching business, I can't say that I bring any of the NLP pieces into it just because it's not authentic to me.
Okay, thank you for your honesty. Would you say you're a coach or a mentor?
I love that. Everybody has a different definition for that,
Yes.
right? Like, every time I ask, everyone thinks of that differently. So for me, I believe I am a coach, and I look at mentors as somebody that it has done exactly what you plan to do, but they're a little bit further ahead. So often I will tell my clients to go and get a mentor in that specific business sector that can give them the insights of like this little thing here and here and here that nobody would know unless they've been through that exact pattern or that path. Whereas as a coach, I really work at a higher level, not good or bad higher, but just at not at, at a deep level. I work at a level of, okay, let's look at the systems. Let's look at how this business can be structured. Let's look at you as a human being. I work with clients from construction industry to beauty industry to food industry. I have had some experience in some of those industries, not all of them, but I definitely have never built a business myself in the beauty industry or in the construction industry. But I've helped these people grow their businesses, build their businesses from working with business principles, and then also that humanity side of it. But there's times where I'll say, you know what you need right now? You need a mentor because you don't know how exactly to break through to the next level. And it requires very detailed information that as a coach, I don't have for you. So that's how I see it. But you know what? I've heard that definition like 100 different ways.
Yeah, my view is a coach is more directive. They're telling you how to achieve X goal, where a coach is a little bit more, they're there to enable you to come to your conclusion yourself. It's a little bit more less directive, it's more explorative and letting someone come to their own conclusions. That's my definition. So that's where I see it. As you say, a mentor is usually someone that's done it previously and sort of can tell you some of the steps that will miss those problems or the curveballs, where a coach by definition is someone that enables that person to be able to achieve those goals. And sometimes the coach, as a coach, it's more driven by the client rather than driven by the coach or mentor on where they want to explore, where they want to go with it. So that's my definition. Would you agree?
I think that I definitely think as a coach, my clients are in charge. I have a deep belief that every single one of my clients has a complete wealth of information of what's good and right for them inside of them. And my job is to help them to bring that to the surface and then to bring in some, knowledge that they may not have about some systems or some strategies or tools. But I don't ever work with somebody that I believe I'm better than. Oh, let me be your leader. I got it. And you don't that's already a break for me. I believe they know it all. They just don't have conscious access. So be it whether it's business or personal, it's my role to help them find what it is that they need. But it's not for me to be above them, telling them that this is how they should be, because they're never going to run a business or I'm never going to want them to run a business that I would run, because that's my business. So I do have that it's very visceral for me that it is not for me to put my opinions and my beliefs on anybody. I help them bring theirs to the surface, their core values, their beliefs, their own ways to run a system. But it's mine or mine, theirs or theirs.
Why did you decide to focus on entrepreneurs and small businesses?
Actually, that flowed as well as when I said, even from university. When I look back at my life, I'm like, oh, that just went from here to here to here. What did I really do? I just flowed there. And so when I left corporate, I worked with much larger organizations. And I was really launching products and services because that's what I was doing in corporate. So that's what I used as my way in to kind of start a business as a consultant. And it was real. And then coaching came from a consulting client that was like, our contract is coming to an end, but will you coach me? So that's how coaching came into my world. And then the coaching was still through referrals, through people that had multi-million-dollar businesses, because that was the community that I was in. And then it was actually a referral that came to me where they were starting, then one and then the next. They actually were just starting brand new, and they were taking out investments. Like one client had sold a property, so they had the money to invest in a coach, even though they were just starting. Another client actually took out a loan, and they came to me already convinced that they were starting their business, but they needed a coach at the beginning. So I actually worked with them from day one, from the explore phase. And what I have now in my group program is explore, plan, develop, and launch. So these people came to me and I'm like, well, I can apply my product development knowledge to business development, help them from the very first day of explore, figure out what is the best idea for them to actually launching that idea. So it organically showed up for me. And then there was this like love for like feeling like I was like this, business doula, almost like birthing businesses. Like, oh my gosh, there's just all like, and then I started my group program where I can actually bring in way more people that can go through it. I can put more and more and more businesses out into the world. So it just felt right. It felt like, well, this is what I'm meant to do. And combining that with actually helping human beings evolve and know themselves, and then put out businesses of integrity that's true and right for them. So it kind of one thing led to the other, but there's just such a joy in watching businesses show up and then seeing like their clients' feedback, like people saying to them, oh my goodness, like you've changed my life, like in the business they put out. And then I'm like, well, remember when we first started and this was just an idea. Now you've actually helped people. Like that cycle is addictive.
I would agree. Working with entrepreneurs and small businesses is so much more fun. I hope my corporate friends aren't watching, but it's so much more fun working with entrepreneurs and small business owners than corporates. It's dynamic, it's exciting, it's rewarding. So I 100% agree with that. Okay, and last section. So what does the future plans hold for you?
And again, as you grow and evolve, like you change, right? So I would have had up and probably even a couple of years ago, an exact plan and like, what do I do next? Where do I go? And I've really been working on allowing and freeing myself and flowing. And so when I say I look back in my life and I can see how things just organically showed up, but yet I exerted so much effort trying to create something. And often a lot of things that I tried to create didn't actually come to fruition, but it was the things that organically showed up that led me here. So I'm actually in a phase in my life where I'm working on, I'm not saying I'm there, but I'm working on allowing what's showing up next? What's actually coming to me. So right now at this point in time, I am still fully immersed, and my attention is in helping new entrepreneurs build businesses and bring businesses into the world. So I envision growing my group program and kind of multiplying this impact and having a part in building a new economy that's built on the principles of authenticity and integrity. Because the more people that know themselves, like I don't believe that somebody that is happy and fulfilled will ever hurt other people, will ever actually do things out of integrity, because they are fulfilled, they are happy. I think the people that are doing things of manipulation, of hurting others, of manipulative marketing and all that, I believe that those people are hurting at some level, whether they're conscious to it or not. There's some level of pain they haven't processed, so therefore they put those things out into the world. So I'm very much invested in growing this platform to put out these businesses of integrity, in the hopes that we actually have an impact on this new economy in the next 10 to 20 years.
Fantastic. Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They don't need a quick fire answer. It's up to you. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
Leaving corporate.
The number of people who I've spoken to since I left corporate who are like, you'll never go back. You'll never go back. And strangely, one of the places that I was in, I don't want to mention which one it was, someone actually started their own business and it failed because of cash flow. As you were saying earlier on, they didn't have that behind them. So the bad months, they couldn't help themselves. And he had to go back to the corporate world. And I said to him, like, do you regret it? He's like, it was enforced on me rather than a choice that he made. And I kind of felt a little bit like, even so, that was when I was leaving my role. And it's interesting because that choice that was taken away from him, he's now had to make the best of a situation that he's in, rather than necessarily choosing what he wanted to do, which I thought was very telling at the time. And now, a number of months after leaving, I feel that much more acutely for him than I did even at that time. Okay, second question is, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I think the best piece of advice is Byron Katie, which is a book I found early on when I left corporate, is accept what is. Find the peace in it and know that acceptance doesn't mean you don't change. Doesn't mean you're stuck. It's just accept what is so you can bring peace to yourself and then go do what it is you want to do to change that. That to me stands out.
It's amazing. Thank you. Who helped you most in your career?
There's been a few. I don't know if I would say just one person, because I remember that my very early mentor, which started me in this journey. And then there's been like, it's like every couple of years or something, magically a new mentor shows up and it's like a new evolvement. So I don't know if there's any one person. I would say there's maybe 3 or 4 people that have evolved. When it's like, when I'm ready, the next one comes and the next one comes. So it's been an evolution of mentors that I'm just so grateful for.
Do you want to give a few shout outs to them?
Well, Ernie Pavan was my very first mentor that really started me in the path of accepting myself, for sure. And then, my partner now, Casey Comden, who came in and, shifted so much of my views, for sure.
Thank you. Do you have any regrets?
I do. I'm not above, like, I know some people are like, well, it's a waste of time to have regrets. And I'm not above being human. I have probably a whole list of regrets, but I come back to the piece around them of, well, but they had to be what they were, or mistakes or regrets. But if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am. So I still recognize them as regrets. And I would be lying if I said I wouldn't wish I could go back and erase and change it. But I can also find the piece of, well, but I wouldn't be here without that.
That's so true. And thank you for admitting, because I get mixed answers on that. Some people are very philosophical. Well, I wouldn't be where I am without the mistakes. And then some people that actually recognize you might have done things differently, even if it was a relationship or something like that, I don't mean necessarily a couple relationship, it could just be a business relationship or a personal relationship. You might have done things differently. And I think that's important to accept that no one's perfect. No one gets it right all the time. And actually, there are things you might have maybe done differently, but you are where you are, and you have to just move on from there. So thank you for your honesty. What are you most proud of?
What stands out to me is everything on the human involvement side. So, having healed myself from anxiety, I am proud because it's something that I did myself. So, I did help myself. And that thing that brings me the most pride is that I actually found a way to help myself. And in that's been a lot of my journey, is having this, experiences I've had in my life of feeling like sometimes I needed people and then disappointed when people didn't show up or didn't do the roles I expected them to play. But actually, when I look back at healing myself from anxiety, it was something that I did on my own to help myself at the highest level, which is to help my health. So that always stands out as an accomplishment. Even though it's not a material accomplishment, it always stands out.
No, I 100% agree. And I think you should be very proud. I think being able to heal yourself is incredibly hard, and what you went through to actually not ask for additional support, however, whatever that might be, I think takes a lot of bravery. So massive plaudits for you being able to do that yourself.
Yeah, and I just want to say, because I don't want to leave it there, I just want to say there's nothing wrong with asking for help. So I don't want anybody to take that message like you're in pain and depression or anxiety and you got to go it alone. Like, ask for help. There's a ton of people that are going to be able to help you. I just look back and that was my path. I went to the library, got this book, and I was able to help myself. So I'm proud of myself, but I didn't want to leave it there, because I think with mental health and having so much experience in my family, and it's so important when you're in pain, let somebody know, let somebody help you.
Absolutely. And it's like, my wife says this a lot. She's a therapist, by the way. She says, like, if you break your arm, you go to a doctor and they help you repair it. If you not a broken brain, but if you have something wrong mentally, with a mental health issue, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't ask for help. And there are people who can help and want to help.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's different approaches. People cope with different things slightly differently. Some people repress it and never really deal with it. I've got a friend of mine who has sort of anxiety issues and is anxious, but just represses it. She doesn't want to accept it as anything more. But she's on a journey herself, and she will come
Timing.
around, I'm sure. But okay, what does legacy mean to you?
To me, legacy means, what is it that you'll be leaving behind that will be a resonance? And to me, that doesn't equate into the material. I don't aspire to leave behind for my kids, properties and things that they can have. I aspire to leave behind messages of acceptance. So I'm most proud when my son says, Mom, I love the fact that you have your views, but you're so respectful of other people's views and beliefs. And we live in a world right now where polarized, right? Everybody's got a side and then you hate the other side. And, he's turning 15, so he's aware of this. And when he says that, I'm like, okay, I'm doing my job.
And it's the hardest job of them all, isn't it? Parenting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or ask you questions?
Yeah, the best place is my website, which is sandraifrancisco.com. And actually, right on the main page, you can also access a free course that will help you get started in business. So if you're, an aspiring entrepreneur, have a job or thinking about it, it's an absolutely free course. It helps you pick your right business idea for you. And then I've got some additional content to pick your target market, to get into value and money mindset, which are the basics when you're starting. So that's right on the main site as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting speaking to you.
Thank you.
Yes.